Okay, we're joined now by another recognisable face, a Shannon man and a Munster man, Alan Quinlan. Alan, thanks very much for joining us here in the No Show Rugby game in aid of various charities in Limerick and beyond. How are you getting on?
I'm good, Duncan. Yeah, thanks very much for having me. It's always nice to recount old stories about my rugby playing days in Limerick, playing with Shannon. We had such brilliant success, and I always count myself very lucky when I moved from Clonwilliam in Tipperary into play with Shannon, and I won 4 All-Ireland leagues in the trot. So it was brilliant success and really, really happy memories for me.
So, yeah, as someone who works in the media and sports media in particular, but I suppose to a big extent around live sports, what's it been like now with the withdrawal, I suppose, both professionally and personally from sport of any description, really, to focus on? How have you found it over the last couple of months?
Well, I think it's hard to believe that it's nearly 11 weeks since the kids were off school. I think it was 11 weeks yesterday. The 12th of March, around that date, and I just don't know where the time has gone. I think initially it was shock, like was for everybody, that Leo Varadkar is announcing from the States that the schools are shutting down. Then we have kind of 2 weeks of social distancing, but still being able to move around and stuff like that. And I have a little boy, he's 11. Well, he's not so little anymore, and he loves being active and out kicking the ball, kicking rugby ball, soccer ball, whatever, cycling. So we went to loads of parks with some of his friends those first 2 weeks, and it was brilliant fun. I love going out in a bit of nature, going out into the parks myself, and just kicking the ball around with them. So that's what we kind of did for 2 weeks. And then the full lockdown came, and it was kind of like, what are we going to do now? We can only go 2 kilometers, but the park is pretty close, so we cycle every evening, and we've been doing that for probably 8-9 weeks, 4 or 5, at least 5 times a week for 2-3 hours in the evenings. And he's done his homework in the morning, bit of chill out, kind of maybe a bit of PlayStation in the mid-afternoon, and then it's out in nature, and it's that's what it's been. And I've loved that part of it, going out and kicking the ball around and cycling and just doing a bit of exploring in the parks all along by the river and stuff like that. So that's been really nice.
In terms of being within the sports media circle, Quinny, is there a lot of optimism that the rugby will kick off when it's due to kick off now in August? Or is there kind of is it a bit cautious at the moment with respect to the plans that have been made?
There's still a little bit of caution there, because obviously Philip Brown announced it from the IRFU's point of view that their roadmap to return on the 22nd, 23rd of August with interprovincials, but we've not heard anything from Scotland, Italy or Wales yet what their plan is to do. Now, I suspect that will happen the next week or so. Pro 14 haven't officially come out and said, well, this is exactly what's happening for, like you hear stuff from different journalists, and you're getting some sort of information that there's 13 Pro 14 games played. There was 8 left to play. They're going to try and play 2. It's finish with 2 games, give everybody 2 games, and they're going to be derby matches in the different countries to try and make a push and get in that playoff stage, and then you have a semi-final and final. So there's still a little bit of caution, but there's optimism that you got to try and move forward. I think I have to be very careful what way I say this, but sport is a very important part of people's lives as well. And aside from the health and safety of people is the most important thing. But the reality of this is, if some sort of movement doesn't happen to try and get back into sport, well, some organizations might sink completely, and there's a lot of people's jobs. I'm on the other side now, and I still work in the media, and people would say, well, you're only saying that because you work in the media. Part of me is saying it because I work in the media, but the reality is there's a lot of, the vast majority, my opinion on this is that there's people going to lose their jobs here, and they might never recover. And that was highlighted by Philip Brown, and it's the same in lots of different industries. So it's not just about the players going out playing a match and they're getting paid and they'll be fine, but it's the people who work in the industry. And there is a lot of I don't class myself as a journalist because I never went and studied journalism, but there's a lot of really good journalists who work in sport who could be out of jobs. And if sport goes, and that's an area that will be hit, the print media, the TV coverage of sport and stuff. So sport is important, but the people's jobs are important as well. So look, hopefully we get back. I think people want some good news. I think John Horn, the GAA president, came out and was pretty clear a couple of weeks ago saying, well, this is what's happening and people's safety is first and we won't be returning under social distancing. Some people said, well, it was good leadership. Others said, well, there's no optimism there. I'm actually by nature a little bit pessimistic anyway. It's in my nature, unfortunately. But I always try and see, is there any light at the end of the tunnel? I want some bit of light, even if it's not true. I want to believe it's true. And I'd love to see, the GAA come out and say, we're going to open the GAA pitches. We're going to try. It may not happen, but this is what we want, So we've got that from the rugby now. We've got that from Premier League in England. And, we're learning all the time. People are only learning about this, Duncan, So look, hopefully sport does come back because it is an important part. You don't have to play sport for sport to be an important part of your life. There's people I know in Tipperary here who look forward to bringing their kids or going to a junior hurling match or a junior rugby match on a Sunday. And that's part of their life.
And I was just going to follow on to that point. We kind of share the esteem of having started our club careers in Clonwilliam and then moving on to Shannon and then Munster. I stopped at Munster. You went on to bigger and better things, fortunately for you. But a club like Clonwilliam, because obviously the professional game has been talked about a lot, and probably to some extent, far lesser extent, the AIL game has been talked about a lot. But when you actually drill right down to the kind of lower tiers, I suppose, of rugby in the country, like a club like Clonwilliam, it's a junior club. It's the third oldest club in the country, a huge tradition. I know like a lot of these clubs are hugely reliant on individual events throughout the year. I know the Clonwilliam one is the big Stephen's Night fundraiser, and that really sets them up financially for the coming year. So in terms of the people you've spoken to back home, like what's the situation with regard to Clonwilliam, Kilfeacle, clubs like that around Munster that are kind of staring into the abyss financially now?
Yeah, it's really difficult for them. Thurles are close by, Cashel are a senior club, very close, Galwey very close as well. So Carrick and Shore, Clonmel, there's a load of junior rugby clubs here, Nina as well. So it's incredible how rugby has grown here in the last 20 years in Tipperary, and obviously traditionally the hurling, you think of Tipperary, you think of hurling, and that's what I grew up wanting to be, a Tipperary hurler. But some say I didn't have the skill or the touch to be that talented hurler, and I followed the path of rugby. But they're it's like the GAA clubs. I think and the soccer clubs here, they're all going to feel the pinch in this, because you still have to pay for insurance for the club, you still have to maintain the facilities, you still have to get jerseys and all that kind of stuff, which are costs. And a lot of these clubs are kind of running on an overdraft scenario anyway. And as you say, certain times of the year they get a block of money, or they get some good gate receipts to have a run in a cup, and they can pay off some of that overdraft. So it's a kind of a continuous battle to try and get funds in and keep the clubs ticking over. You've got to maintain the buildings and the facilities, and all those things cost money. So it is a concern and a worry for them. Will we see them back playing this year? I met someone from Clonwilliam today, and they said, will there be any junior rugby this year? And you kind of bring it all the way down from the top, from professional game, where the professional athletes are going to be tested. But what are you going to do with amateur rugby players in rural parts of Ireland? How can you facilitate kind of a testing system for them? So I don't think we're going to see any junior rugby back for a while, unless we get some sort of news on a vaccine or an antiviral drug, or this bloody coronavirus goes away. So it's a big concern and a worry for people. But they've got to find ways and hope that everybody right across the communities, and you go to some of the towns around Ireland, and traditionally you get some sponsorship from the shops and the retailers, but they're in a position now where they're financially hampered, and so it's a very difficult situation. People are doing lots of kind of online quizzes. They have these 50-50 draws, so they're just going to have to try and weather the storm. And And maybe if the IRFU get going again and start generating some funds, that maybe there can be some sort of facility made available to help the clubs as well, and some grants and stuff like that. But it's a very complex situation, and it is a worry. But look, Clanwilliam has been around for a long time, lots of great clubs throughout the country, and I'm sure they'll weather the storm and maybe get through it. But it's going to have an impact for a couple of years. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. I have very happy memories at Clanwilliam. I think it was one of only 2 trophies that I won in my entire amateur or professional career. We won the OConnor Cup. I think there'd been a bit of a drought. I think it had been 5 or 6 years before, or since Clanwilliam had won it. So it was a short-lived time in the Clanwilliam jersey, but very memorable. I remember I had my Leaving Cert geography project due at 9 o'clock the next morning, and the lads made me stay out. And
you were trying to get home.
Exactly, yeah, sculling points and Nellies and Tiptown. So I wasn't in the best frame of mind when I was doing the final touches the following morning. But moving on to the teams that have been selected, you've obviously been selected on the Limerick 15 by Donal Lenihan. Looking at that kind of that aisle of the pack, Peter Clohessy, Mick Galwey, and yourself, there's 3 lads that were kind of well used to living on the edge, we'll say, when rules were maybe a little less strict than they are now. I think there was a massive place for the element of a bit of a rogue, the guy that could, ruffle the opposition's feathers, and it's probably something that's kind of gradually being eliminated from the game now. I certainly think it's a pity, because I really used to enjoy characters who were able to bring a really hard edge and were able to live on the edge and kind of be really effective and kind of be enforcers in a way that they're probably not able to at the moment, because they have to be so careful about, first of all, causing an infringement and then getting a suspension or whatever else. So what are your thoughts on that, the fact that it's become so tightly policed now that element of rugby has escaped somewhat?
Yeah, well, I wish, first of all, I wish I would have been a bit different. My makeup or my DNA or my desire inside me that I obviously was very, very lucky to, play for Ireland, play for Munster, and be a pro for 15 years. The regret is, 27 caps for Ireland. I personally, without being cocky, think, if I was calmer, if I was a little bit more controlled in my thought process, and maybe didn't kind of cross that kind of line at times, that I would have had more caps. And that's part of the frustration for me. But look, some parts of that desire drove me on and kept me coming back. I would have been unlucky with some injuries at different stages, but I always think when I started going to AIL games in the early mid-90s, it was take no prisoners, and it was, if you're on the wrong side of the ball, and if you were doing a bit of cheating, or if you were slowing the ball down, that you got a bit of a shoeing, and that was it, and you kind of got out of the way. And if you put your body in the line there, you kind of accepted it. And unfortunately, I didn't kind of change my mindset always, and that old kind of mentality came back at times. And I wouldn't say I was a dirty player. Some might disagree. No. I think I was more foolish and maybe tetchy and narky, and that kind of created a distraction sometimes. But, I do agree with you in a sense that you need someone to kind of take hold at times. If I had a choice, Duncan, I'd go right back to the start and say, well, somebody else do that, please. I just want to use my talent, because, I could do crossfield kicks. I could do 20-yard passes. I could make breaks and score tries. But sometimes I was distracted with scuffling with someone, or chasing someone down that kind of give me a punch or clip me early on. And it does affect performance, So with respect to the modern day players, they're very robotic. There is no sort of cynicism there. There is no sort of, well, somebody's bullying us, we can't react back and kind of go toe to toe with them. And that does frustrate me a bit, because I think New Zealand, with the greatest respect to them, have probably been the greatest rugby team the greatest team ever, and consistently, but they're bullies, and that's a compliment. Part of their incredible talent is, well, we're not just going to beat you with skill and the talent we have, but we're kind of lay down a marker and say, well, how dare you even think that you can cross our line and touch our ball or frustrate us, So they're very much the protagonists around, you know, setting the intensity and stuff like that, and they blow teams away sometimes. And I think, you know, sometimes you've got to react to that and be physical back, and be a little bit cynical yourself. And I think sometimes, you know, if there's any criticism for modern day players, they're hamstrung to do that because you get punished. So it's kind of a catch-22. Well, if somebody's killing your ball, and you know, probably one of the greatest rugby players of all time was brilliant at it, Richie McCaw, for years and years. Well, if you stamp on Richie McCaw's backside or his hamstring and get him out of there, or ruck him or step over him, and you put a foot in him, it's a penalty against you and a yellow card, so your team is punished. So it's kind of getting that balance, really. But I think, you know, it's one thing, it's not about being dirty, it's just about being physical and being a little bit narky and a little bit aggressive, and some guys are very good at tempering that. You know, Paul O'Connell is probably has as much, if not more, narkiness in him, but he can control it better. And Paul was always brilliant at doing that. You know, sometimes he threw a punch or got into a scrap or scuffle, but that's why he was a captain. That's why I wasn't a captain, because he was brilliant at doing that. You know, Golov was the same. I remember Golov saying to a referee one time, well, you sort it out quickly, or else I'll sort it out, or we'll sort it out. You know, that kind of an attitude. Claw was kind of similar. That, you know, Claw could kind of lose the plot completely and just run in over a ruck and stamp all over someone and give away a penalty. But he was an incredible player, and he was a hard bastard to play with. And I remember he stamped on me in training one time. We were on the same team. It was at Munster training. There was a bit of a training match, and I was at the side of our ball. It came back pretty clean to Peter Stringer, and he stamped on me a couple of times. And I said, Claude, what are you doing? I'm actually with you, and I'm actually nowhere near the ball, even if I was the opposition player. And he just said, look, he said, take your shoe and like a man. And that was his attitude. So part of the old school Limerick AIL brutish kind of police to break down yourself was brilliant. But of course, you can't have that, and you can't be stamping and punching and kicking people. And you know, for the safety of the modern day players, you can't have that. You know, and again, the safety of players in the rugby field is the most important thing. But sometimes you just love to see a little bit of rucking. You know, not punching or headbutting or shoulder charge. I think shoulder charging into a ruck is actually much more dangerous than actually rucking in a rucking motion backwards and getting someone away from the ball. You know, you're not going to do untold damage to someone, have a little bit of rucking. But look, I'll probably get criticised for saying that.
No, I'd agree with you. I'd agree with you wholeheartedly, because people seem to think that it's like people calling for the ability. Like nobody's asking for permission to hurt the guy. Like, you know, to actually do damage to them. But like I'd be very much in agreement with you. I think people, when they talk about shooing or rucking guys that are on the wrong side, without getting too technical, like I think people assume that belongs in the 90s or something like that. But like when I started playing professionally, I think by the letter of the law, it wasn't allowed, but people still did it. And there was never anything said about it because it was just accepted. And it was only really, I think, 3 or 4 years ago that it became something that you couldn't do anymore, really. So it's not that long ago. And like, I know obviously everyone's come out of games with stud marks on their back or their legs or wherever, but I think any serious damage that was done by it was rare, if ever it happened. I think it served a purpose. But I would agree with you.
It served a purpose, but I don't think there's a need for it now. I think, but I think it frustrates people that if the guy kills the ball here, it's a penalty, and it's a lot of stop-start stuff. So it's somewhere very, you know, you don't want somebody stamping on somebody for the sake of it. But, you know, rucking motion backwards for me is maybe something, but I don't think you can do that. So there's probably a waste of time us even saying that maybe it should happen, because it won't change, and maybe it's the right thing. Maybe it's right. But I looked at Munster Neath last Saturday in TG Carr. It was 17 years ago since we won that Celtic League final, and I just thought it's incredible watching it, because you're thinking, that's a penalty, that's a high tackle, that could be a yellow card. But it was just, there was some sort of a free-flowing part of it that even though we weren't probably as chiseled or as strong or as powerful as maybe the guys today, and that's changing all the time. And we did get fitter and stronger and more powerful right up to, you know, when we won it the second time in 2008. I remember the condition of the players was we were all more powerful and stronger, and that gradually happened over the years. But there was just a flow to that game there was a bit of kamikaze to it, and it was just brilliant. Obviously not from a neat point of view, but there was great excitement from the way we were trying to throw the ball around and stuff, and the ambition of players, and so rugby has changed a little bit. Some would say not for the best, and part of that is true.
Yeah, I think, and I would agree with you. Like, I don't think, I certainly never would have considered you dirty, and I think you might be a little bit harsh on yourself, because I think at the time you were playing,
I was stupid, Duncan. I was stupid sometimes.
Every team that had ambitions of going on and winning trophies needed 3 or 4 guys like you in a pack to be able to front up, as you say, when it was put up to you. So I think that you know, if there wasn't a place for someone like that in the Munster side, I don't think Munster would have been as successful as they were in that period. So I think it was very important.
My bark was worse than my bite. That was probably it. But anyway.
Well, look, just a final word, Quinny, in terms of looking at the overall teams, the Limerick 15 versus the Ireland 15, who would you fancy and why? And maybe just if you focus on the packs, because I think the matchup of the packs is particularly interesting there.
Yeah, it is. It's incredible, and it's just unbelievable to see so many good players who've played in the All Ireland League and played for their clubs and come through the club game. It's unbelievable, and when I look at the pack, I think Claw, Woody, and Hayes. Geez, I wouldn't mind being on their team. And then I see my name down as 6, and I see Galwey and O'Connell in front of me, and I say, geez, I fancy that front 5, and then Wally and Axel. And you know, Wally, Axel, and myself played for so long together. We knew each other inside out, and I just look at that pack and I think, Jesus, I want to be in that pack. And obviously that's kind of, I mean that respectfully, to looking across the way, because you know, the other pack is incredible. There's a lot of brilliant players, like, you know, Jack McGrath's in line, Tyke Furlong, probably, you know, one of the best, if not the best tight heads in the world. Sean Cronin, so explosive, so successful with Ireland, Leinster as well. And Shannon, because I played with him in the 2006 final. I came off the bench and he scored an incredible try that day. Tom Hayes, someone who was probably very, very unlucky that he didn't get the breakthrough, and then showed incredible balls, if you like, to go to Plymouth and then on to
Exeter.
I'm gone blank, sorry. And be so well respected and captain the side, and have so much respect for what he achieved in the Premiership there. And you know, on any other day, and with a little bit of luck, Tom could have been a regular for Munster, could have been an international as well. So Tom is the kind of fellow you play against, and you know that, you know, after a game you've played against, you know, hard grizzles, and you learn it. You know what I mean? If you were opposite to him, and then Mal O'Kelly in a British and Irish line twice, and you know, brilliant success for Ireland as well. And then you look at the back when you think, right, who am I'm going up against Sean O'Brien, and wow, he's a sensational player. You know, power, pace, skill set, and ability to run a brilliant line, and you know. But I was always used to, no matter when you play for Munster and you're playing in Europe, or you get lucky to get play for your country, you never look at your opposition and go, well, they're weak. You know, at that level, you're going to be playing top quality players right across the board, and but you test yourself and you think, you know, I've got to be on the money today to get the better of them. So, you know, Sean O'Brien, I'd have to be fairly tuned in and no lack of concentration when you're playing against someone opposite him, because, you know, ultimately as a pack, and you know, well, you've got to work as 8. You want all your forwards, like scrum, line out, but individually then you want to get that little nudge and get a tackle in your man. So it does sometimes, you know, a lesser part of it comes down to the individual battle. But you look at Eddie Halvey then, and Dennis Leamy, you know, Leamy, incredible player, someone I played with so long as well. I have massive respect for him, and probably in 2006 he was probably the best number 8 in world rugby. I think he went to New Zealand, gave an exhibition, gave a performance in Hamilton in the first test against New Zealand, which was out of this world. I think the Irish team we were leading up to 72 minutes, and Graham Henry said it after the match that Dennis Leamy at the moment is the best number 8 in the world. So Leames was just an incredible player, and himself and Sean O'Brien, two incredibly physical, grizzled guys who had incredible skill as well. And then, Eddie Halvey, who was probably so talented, quick, elusive, so those three on the day would be an incredible challenge for anyone. I played with Eddie for so long as well, and you could just track Eddie Halvey and make breaks off him when he got tackled and his passes and offloads. But, going through the Jack McGrath, Sean Cronin, Tyke Furlong, I'm still going with Peter Clohessy, Keith Wood and John Hayes, probably because I know them better and I played longer with them, and I fit. And top of his game, Mick Galwey was an incredible captain as well, an incredible captain, a great leader for us and a great mentor, a guy who was calm, controlled and inspired lots of people. And then you have O'Connell you're talking, one of the greatest second rows ever. So I just think the pack, and you look at Axel then, what he did for Munster, what he did for Ireland, lifting that trophy in 06, and he was an incredible inspiration to lots of us as well. So from the playing point of view, I think, I played in lots of these games, Duncan, where they were kind of trial matches. I think back to one in 2003 before we went on tour to Australia, Tonga and Samoa. We played in the Lansdowne Road, as it was called then. It's the Aviva now. And you play in these games and you're playing against guys you're playing with Munster, and everyone's mixed and matched, and you just don't know what way they'll go, really. Sometimes you think, well, I'm on a better team here because I fancy, oh God, Drico's on our team, Paulie's on our team, Keith Wood's on the team, whatever. And you kind of look, and then you go to the other side and you think, well, Frankie Sheen has gone up against Woody, and like Frankie could clatter Woody or just have one of those nights where he's driven to prove a point, So you play a match like this, sometimes you don't know what way it's going, but I'm kind of siding with the Limerick selection, given it's the help and support to all the local charities. And I'm just disappointed Golov is playing in the Limerick selection, but he's the selector on the Irish selection. But they're two brilliant teams, in fairness. You look at their backline, the Ireland selection, and you look at the 10, 12, 13 scenario, Rog, Darcy and O'Driscoll, like how successful they were for Ireland for such a long period of time. And but if I was in the dressing room now, I'd be going over to Rob Henderson and Mikey Mullins, and I'd be telling them that Drico and Darcy are laughing at them, and they just think they're shit and that they're going to destroy them. And then a fired up Hendo or a fired up Mikey Mullins can do an incredible job for you. So
yeah, it was actually Owen Redden mentioned last night that if Hendo was on the other team and he saw Redden and Rog at 9 and 10, then he'd just be steaming down the
for
channel
sure.
for 80 minutes.
And he'd be trying to get at Rog, absolutely no doubt. And then of course we've Pat Murray, fullback, who was incredibly unlucky not to be capped. Brilliant leader, brilliant captain, great coach for Shannon as well. So he's at the back. So you'll forgive me if I don't get too into the back lines and kind of start breaking all their strengths and weaknesses. But I think forwards win matches, backs decide by how much, and I think the Limerick selection are just going to nudge this one.
Very good. Quinny, thanks a million for your time. Thanks for giving up your time and joining us to support the No-Show game. Really appreciate it. The very best of luck with the remainder of your time at home, and hopefully a swift return of sport so you can get back to doing what you do best.
My pleasure, Duncan. And I just want to say, you mentioned Clanwilliam there. Without Shannon, we wouldn't have had the platform we had and the success in the AIL. So it's just incredible to think at one stage, I remember being in the Shannon clubhouse and being incredibly proud of maybe 9 or 10 or 12, I can't remember the number, international jerseys. And we always took great pride in that, the number of Shannon guys that were on the Munster team or the Irish team. So without Shannon, we wouldn't have kind of had that platform that we had. So I know this has been organised by Shannon Rugby Club, which is so massive credit to them. and to all the brilliant charities like Barnardos, Midwest Simon, Pieta House, Limerick Suicide Watch, Children's Grief Centre, Milford Hospital, and Rugby Players Ireland Foundation as well. They all need a little bit of help in hand, but it's also nice, and I think it's a good idea to maybe celebrate all the great players who played in the AIL and what they've done for the game, past and present.
That's right. Well, thanks very much again, Quinny. Appreciate your time, and take care.
My pleasure. Thanks.